The late afternoon sun bathed Gabriel Torres's penthouse in golden light as he stared at the skyline, lost in thought. A self-made billionaire, he had built an empire from nothing, yet tonight he would risk it all for the truth. Disguised, as a waiter at his girlfriend's family dinner, he was about to hear what they really thought of him. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Gabriel Torres's penthouse office. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring at the city skyline. At 43, Gabriel had built an empire from nothing, starting with a small tech company. 20 years ago, he now controlled businesses worth billions. Yet despite his success, he kept a low profile. Unlike other wealthy men, Gabriel avoided the spotlight. His assistant, Marta, knocked on the door. "Mr. Torres, your dinner reservation is in an hour. Should I call your driver?" Gabriel turned, his expression serious. "Cancel it, Marta. I've made other plans for tonight." Marta nodded, though her eyes showed concern. She had worked for Gabriel long enough to know something was bothering him. "Is everything all right with Ms. Vasconcelos?" she asked cautiously. Gabriel's features softened at the mention of Beatrice. "Everything's fine. I just need to handle something important tonight." After Marta left, Gabriel walked to his desk and picked up a framed photo of Beatrice Vasconcelos. At 36, she was beautiful in a classic way. Dark hair, warm brown eyes, and a smile that had captured his heart 8 months ago when they met at a charity event. Beatrice came from the Vasconcelos family, one of the oldest and wealthiest in the city. What she didn't know was that Gabriel's wealth now surpassed even her family's. He had deliberately kept his true financial status hidden from her and her family. "I wanted you to love me for who I am," he whispered to the photo. "Not what I have." Tonight was the big family dinner at the Vasconcelos mansion. Beatrice had been nervous about it for weeks. It would be the first time her entire family would be together since she started dating Gabriel. Her parents, Eduardo, and Helena and her older brother Ricardo would all be there. Gabriel had planned to attend as her date, but yesterday he overheard a phone conversation that changed everything. Beatrice had been in his living room, thinking he was in the shower. "Mom, please, just give him a chance," she had pleaded. "I know he's not what you expected for me, but he's a good man." There was a pause as she listened. "No, he's not rich like us, but he works hard. He's a businessman with his own company." Another pause. "Ricardo shouldn't judge him before meeting him. Just because Gabriel didn't go to an Ivy League school doesn't mean he's beneath us." Those words had struck Gabriel like a physical blow. Is that how Beatrice saw him? As someone beneath her family's status, someone she needed to defend. That night, Gabriel couldn't sleep. By morning, he had formed a plan. It was risky, perhaps even foolish, but he needed to know the truth. He picked up his phone and called an old friend. "Carlos? It's Gabriel. I need your help with something unusual." 2 hours later, Gabriel stood in the kitchen of the Vasconcelos mansion, dressed in a waiter's uniform. Carlos, who owned the catering company hired for tonight's dinner, had reluctantly agreed to Gabriel's plan. "This is crazy," Carlos whispered as they prepared trays of appetizers. "If they recognize you, they won't," Gabriel assured him, adjusting the black bow tie of his uniform. "I've only met Beatrice's parents once, briefly, and never her brother. Plus," he added, pulling a pair of black-rimmed glasses from his pocket, and putting them on, "these will help." Carlos shook his head. "And what exactly do you hope to learn from this?" Gabriel's expression turned serious. "The truth." From the kitchen, Gabriel could hear the sounds of guests arriving. Beatrice had texted him earlier asking where he was. He'd replied that he was running late due to an emergency at work, but would be there soon. Little did she know, he was already there, watching and waiting. The first hour was uneventful. Gabriel moved through the rooms with a tray of champagne flutes, keeping his head down and his ears open. Most of the conversation was bland social talk, business, politics, vacations. Then, as dinner was about to be served, he heard Beatrice's voice from the main dining room. "He should be here any minute. I'm sorry for the delay." Gabriel positioned himself near the kitchen door, where he could see into the dining room. Beatrice looked, stunning in a blue dress, her hair elegantly styled. Her mother, Helena, sat at one end of the long table, while her father, Eduardo, sat at the other. Ricardo, her brother, sat across from her empty chair, where Gabriel was supposed to be. "Perhaps your businessman friend got lost on the way to our humble home," Ricardo said with a smirk. He was in his early 40s, with the same dark hair as Beatrice, but none of her warmth. Beatrice frowned. "He had an emergency at work, Ricardo, it happens." Eduardo Vasconcelos, a distinguished man in his 60s, cleared his throat. "What kind of business did you say he runs, dear?" "He has a technology company," Beatrice replied. "They develop software solutions." Helena raised a perfectly shaped eyebrow. "Small, I assume? I don't recall hearing his name in the industry." Gabriel felt his jaw tighten. He had deliberately kept his company, Torres Tech, under multiple umbrella corporations to maintain his privacy. Few people knew he owned one of the largest technology conglomerates on the West Coast. "It's successful enough," Beatrice said defensively. "Gabriel works very hard," Ricardo laughed. "I'm sure he does. Especially now that he's dating a Vasconcelos. Dating up can be exhausting." "Ricardo," Beatrice snapped. "That's not fair." Carlos appeared beside Gabriel. "Are you sure you want to hear this?" he whispered. Gabriel nodded grimly. "I need to know." As dinner progressed, Gabriel moved around the table, serving wine and removing plates. No one paid him any attention. He was just another member of the staff, invisible. The conversation continued to circle back to him, each comment more cutting than the last. "I looked into his background," Ricardo said, sipping his wine. "Community college education, started his company with a loan, drives a modest car, lives in a decent apartment, but nothing special." Gabriel had to fight to keep his expression neutral. His modest car was a vintage Porsche he loved. His decent apartment was the entire top floor of one of the most exclusive buildings in the city. But he had never shown Beatrice his real home. They always met at her place or the smaller apartment he kept for privacy. "At least he's not after your money," Helena said to Beatrice, "though I can't imagine what kind of future you see with him. Our circles don't exactly overlap with small business owners." Eduardo nodded in agreement. "I had hoped you would find someone more suitable, someone who understands our world." Gabriel watched Beatrice's face, waiting for her defense, waiting for her to stand up for him. She sighed and put down her fork. "Can we please talk about something else? Gabriel might not be as wealthy or well-connected as the men you'd prefer for me, but he makes me happy." It wasn't the passionate defense he had hoped for. She hadn't rejected their assumptions about him. She hadn't told them that status and money didn't matter. She had merely asked to change the subject. Ricardo wasn't finished. "I bet he's delighted to be invited here tonight. Probably told all his friends he's dining with the Vasconcelos family." "He's not like that," Beatrice said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Of course he is," Helena replied. "Men like him always are. They see our name, our connections, and they want a piece of it." Gabriel had heard enough. He placed the wine bottle he was holding on the table with more force than necessary. All eyes turned to him. "Is there a problem?" Eduardo asked, annoyed. At the interruption, Gabriel straightened and removed his glasses. "Yes, there is." Beatrice's eyes widened in shock. "Gabriel, what are you doing?" "Finding out the truth," he replied calmly. Though inside he was anything but calm, he untied the bow tie and faced the stunned family. "I'm Gabriel Torres, not the struggling small business owner you think I am, but the CEO and founder of Torres Technologies Group. My modest company employs over 5,000 people worldwide and is valued at just under $4 billion. Heavy silence fell over the room. Gabriel turned to Beatrice, whose face had gone pale. "I kept my wealth private because I wanted to be sure that anyone who loved me did so for the right reasons. I wanted to know if your family would accept me for who I am, not what I have." His voice grew harder. "Now I know." Ricardo was the first to recover. "This is some kind of joke, right?" "Google me," Gabriel replied coldly. "Though you won't find much. I value my privacy. But my company? That you'll find plenty about." Eduardo cleared his throat. "Mr. Torres, this is highly irregular behavior. If this is true, why the deception?" "Because money changes how people see you," Gabriel said. "It creates a mask. I wanted to see behind your masks tonight." He looked directly at Beatrice. "All of your masks." Tears welled in Beatrice's eyes. "Gabriel, I don't understand. Why would you do this?" "Because I needed to know if you would defend me when it mattered. If you truly saw me as your equal regardless of what your family thought." He shook his head sadly. "You didn't." "That's not fair." Beatrice stood up, her voice trembling. "I did defend you." "No," Gabriel said quietly. "You accepted their premise, that I was beneath you. You didn't challenge their values or their judgment. You just asked them to look past my supposed inadequacies because I make you happy." Helena had pulled out her phone and was frantically searching. Her expression shifted from skepticism to shock. "Torres Technologies Group. My God, Eduardo, he's telling the truth." Gabriel didn't wait for their reaction. He turned and walked toward the door. "Gabriel, wait!" Beatrice called after him, rushing around the table. He paused at the doorway and looked back at her. The woman he had fallen in love with. The woman he had hoped would be different from others who had only wanted his money. "I wanted to know if I was marrying into a family that would respect me, money or no money," he said. "I have my answer now." With that, he walked out, leaving Beatrice standing in the elegant dining room, surrounded by her stunned family. As he stepped into the cool night air, Gabriel felt both pain and a strange sense of relief. The truth hurt, but at least now he knew. The question was, what would he do with that knowledge? Gabriel drove through the night, his hands gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. The events at the Vasconcelos mansion kept replaying in his mind. Their condescending comments, their assumptions about his worth based on what they thought he had or didn't have, and Beatrice's tepid defense of him. He pulled into the underground garage of his real home, a penthouse that occupied the entire top floor of the Skyline Tower, one of the most exclusive addresses in the city. The security guard nodded respectfully as Gabriel parked his vintage Porsche and headed for the private elevator. "Welcome home, Mr. Torres." The elevator's automated system greeted him as it scanned his fingerprint. The penthouse was dark and quiet when he entered. Gabriel didn't bother turning on the lights. He walked straight to the bar and poured himself a glass of whiskey, then moved to the wall of windows overlooking the city. His phone had been buzzing non-stop since he left the dinner. 12 missed calls from Beatrice. Multiple text messages. "Gabriel, please talk to me. I'm so sorry, please give me a chance to explain. I didn't know what to say to them. You caught me off guard. Where are you?" "I'm worried." He turned off his phone and tossed it onto the couch. Tonight had shown him a side of Beatrice and himself that he hadn't been prepared to see. Meanwhile, at the Vasconcelos mansion, chaos reigned. Beatrice was frantically trying to reach Gabriel while her family huddled around Eduardo's laptop, looking up everything they could find about Gabriel Torres and his company. Torres Technologies Group, valued at nearly $4 billion, Eduardo read aloud, his voice a mixture of awe and dismay. Founded by Gabriel Torres 20 years ago, keeps an exceptionally low profile, rarely appears in public. He looked up at his family. He wasn't exaggerating. Ricardo paced the room, running his hands through his hair. "How did we not know this? How did you not know this?" he demanded of Beatrice. Beatrice sat on the couch, tears streaming down her face. "He never told me. We always met at my place, or at a small apartment he kept downtown. He drove a nice car, but nothing flashy. He never talked about his work in detail." She wiped at her tears. "I thought he was just a regular businessman with a modest company." Helena was still in shock. "But why would a billionaire hide his wealth? It doesn't make sense." "It makes perfect sense," Eduardo said quietly. "Think about it. A man with that kind of money has to be careful about who gets close to him. He wanted to know if Beatrice loved him for himself, not his bank account. And we just failed his test spectacularly," Ricardo muttered, pouring himself another drink. Beatrice stood up, her grief turning to anger. "This isn't fair. He lied to me for 8 months. He came here tonight as a server to spy on us. How is that okay?" Eduardo gave his daughter a steady look. "And what did he hear from us, Beatrice? That he wasn't good enough because we thought he wasn't wealthy, that he was beneath you." Beatrice fell silent. Her father was right. They had judged Gabriel based solely on his perceived financial status. "I need to find him," she said finally. I need to explain. And say what? Helena asked. That we're sorry we insulted him when we thought he was poor, but now that we know he's rich, he's welcome in the family. The truth of her mother's words hit Beatrice hard. Whatever she said now would sound hollow, motivated by his newly revealed wealth. I love him, she whispered. I really do. His money doesn't change that. But would you have fallen in love with him if you had known he was a busboy instead of a business owner? Ricardo challenged. Be honest with yourself, Beatrice. She couldn't answer that question, and that silence told her everything she needed to know. The next morning, Gabriel woke up on his couch, still in his clothes from the night before. His head throbbed from the whiskey and lack of sleep. He checked his phone to find 23 missed calls and numerous texts from Beatrice. There were also several calls from unknown numbers, probably her family members, who had undoubtedly done their research by now. He took a long shower, letting the hot water wash away the remnants of last night. As the water beat down on him, he thought about what to do next. Part of him wanted to end things with Beatrice immediately. The look on her face when he revealed himself, the shock, the confusion, but most of all, the embarrassment, told him everything he needed to know. Yet another part of him still loved her. 8 months of shared laughter, deep conversations and tender moments couldn't be erased by one night. After his shower, Gabriel called Marta. Cancel all my meetings for today, he instructed. And can you have Carlos come to my office? I need to thank him for his help last night. Of course, Mr. Torres, Marta replied. She hesitated before adding, Ms. Vasconcelos has called the office several times this morning. Gabriel sighed. Tell her I'm in meetings all day. Yes, sir. And is everything all right? No, Gabriel admitted, but it will be. At Torres Technology's headquarters, Gabriel buried himself in work, reviewing contracts and proposals that had been waiting for his attention. It was easier to focus on business decisions than to think about the mess his personal life had become. Carlos arrived around noon, looking worried. You didn't have to thank me. That's what friends are for, even when the friend is asking you to do something completely insane. Gabriel managed a small smile. I appreciate it anyway. And I'm sorry if I caused any problems with the catering. Carlos waved his hand dismissively. The Vasconcelos family was too shocked to notice that the food wasn't being served after your dramatic exit. He sat down across from Gabriel. So was it worth it? Finding out what they really thought? Gabriel leaned back in his chair. Yes and no. I needed to know, but now I almost wish I didn't. And Beatrice, what are you going to do about her? That was the million-dollar question, wasn't it? What to do about the woman he loved who hadn't been able to stand up for him when it mattered? I don't know yet, Gabriel admitted. Part of me says walk away now. But you love her. Carlos finished for him, and love makes us do stupid things, like pretending to be waiters at fancy dinner parties. Gabriel couldn't help but chuckle at that. Touché. After Carlos left, Gabriel went back to work, but he couldn't focus. Beatrice's face kept appearing in his mind. The first time they met, at the art gallery fundraiser, where she had approached him to discuss a painting, not knowing who he was. Their first date at a small Italian restaurant, where they talked until the owner politely asked them to leave because they were closing. The weekend they spent at her beach house, walking along the shore and planning a future together. Had it all been a lie? Not on his part. He had been genuine in everything except his financial status. But what about her? Had she seen potential in him despite thinking he wasn't wealthy? Or had she been with him for other reasons? Perhaps rebellion against her family's expectations. Gabriel was so lost in these thoughts that he didn't notice his office door opening until Marta's voice broke through. Mr. Torres, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's okay, Marta. I said I'd let you know when I needed anything. No, sir, that's not it. Ms. Vasconcelos is here. She's very insistent on seeing you. Gabriel froze. He wasn't ready for this confrontation yet. He needed more time to sort out his feelings. Before he could respond, Beatrice pushed past Marta into his office. She looked like she hadn't slept. Her eyes were red-rimmed. Her normally perfect hair was hastily pulled back, and she wore jeans and a simple blouse instead of her usual elegant attire. "You can't avoid me forever, Gabriel," she said, her voice hoarse from crying. Marta looked at Gabriel questioningly. He nodded, signaling that it was okay. "I'll make sure you're not disturbed," Marta said, closing the door behind her. Gabriel and Beatrice stared at each other across the vast expanse of his office. This was the first time she had seen his real workplace, the top floor of a gleaming skyscraper with his name on it, not the modest office space he had once shown her. "So this is the real you?" Beatrice finally said, looking around at the expansive office with its floor-to-ceiling windows and modern art pieces. "Part of it," Gabriel replied, "the part I kept hidden from you." "Why?" The pain in her voice was evident. "Why did you lie to me for 8 months? Was it all some kind of test?" Gabriel stood up and walked to the window, his back to her. "I didn't plan it this way. When we first met, I didn't correct your assumption that I was just a regular businessman because it was refreshing. For once, someone was talking to me. Not my bank account." He turned to face her. "Then as we got closer, I kept waiting for the right moment to tell you the truth. But the longer I waited, the harder it became. So you decided that spying on my family dinner was the right moment." Anger flashed in her eyes. "Do you have any idea how humiliated I felt?" "Humiliated?" Gabriel's voice hardened. "I'm the one who stood there listening to your family tear me down because they thought I wasn't rich enough for you. And you," he shook his head, "you didn't even defend me." "Not really." Tears filled Beatrice's eyes again. "That's not fair." "I did defend you. You asked them to look past what they saw as my shortcomings. That's not the same as telling them that their values are wrong." "So this was a test," Beatrice said bitterly. "And I failed." Gabriel ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "It wasn't meant to be a test. I just wanted to know if your family would accept me for who I am, not what I have." "And what about me?" Beatrice stepped closer to him. "Did I ever give you reason to believe I cared about your money? I fell in love with a man I thought was a hard-working business owner with a modest company. I never asked about your finances or pressured you to spend money on me." Gabriel hesitated. She was right about that. Beatrice had never seemed materialistic or overly interested in his financial status. She had been content with simple dates and genuine connections. "No, you didn't," he admitted. "But last night showed me that you're not willing to stand up to your family for me. And in your world, that matters." Beatrice looked down, a tear falling onto the plush carpet. "I was caught off guard. I couldn't process what was happening." She looked back up at him. "But I'm here now. Doesn't that count for something? I came looking for you, not your money." Gabriel felt his resolve weakening. He still loved her. That hadn't changed overnight. But could they move forward after this? Could he trust that she loved him for who he was? "I don't know where we go from here, Beatrice," he said honestly. "There's too much deception on both sides now." Beatrice took another step toward him. "We start over, no more secrets, no more tests, just us being honest with each other. And your family, they know who I am now, what I'm worth. Any relationship we have will always be tainted by that knowledge." "Then we'll prove them wrong," Beatrice said firmly. "We'll show them that what we have is real, regardless of your bank account." Gabriel wanted to believe her. He wanted to take her in his arms and forget the disaster of the previous night. But something held him back. "I need time," he said finally. "This isn't something I can decide right now." Beatrice looked like she wanted to argue, but she nodded instead. "I understand. I'll give you space." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small envelope. "But before I go, I want you to have this." Gabriel took the envelope, puzzled. "Open it later," Beatrice said, "when you're ready to remember why we fell in love in the first place." With that, she turned and walked out of his office, leaving Gabriel alone with the envelope and his thoughts. After she left, he sat at his desk, turning the envelope over in his hands. Part of him wanted to open it immediately, while another part feared what he might find inside. Finally, curiosity won out. He carefully opened the envelope and pulled out its contents, a single photograph. It showed the two of them at the beach, taken during that weekend at her house. They were laughing, their arms around each other with the sunset casting a golden glow over them. On the back, Beatrice had written, "Money can't buy this." Gabriel stared at the photo for a long time. remembering that perfect day. The simplicity of being with someone who made him happy, who saw him as just a man, not a billionaire. But was that man real? Or had he been playing a role for so long that he had forgotten where the truth ended and the lies began? As the day turned to evening, Gabriel remained at his desk, the photograph still in his hand, torn between the man he had pretended to be and the man he really was, and wondering if Beatrice could love both versions of him. A week passed, and when Gabriel threw himself into work, he spent long hours at the office, attended meetings he would normally delegate, and reviewed projects that didn't really need his attention. Anything to keep his mind off Beatrice and the photograph that now sat in the drawer of his bedside table. Marta noticed the change in her boss. After working for him for 15 years, she knew when something was wrong. "Mr. Torres," she said, entering his office with a stack of papers one evening, "you've been here until midnight every day this week. Even the cleaning staff is worried about you." Gabriel looked up from his computer, the dark circles under his eyes evidence of his exhaustion. "I have a lot to catch up on, Marta." She placed the papers on his desk and crossed her arms. "You've never needed to work these hours before. This is about Ms. Vasconcelos, isn't it?" Gabriel sighed. There was no point denying it. "I don't know what to do, Marta. I love her, but I don't know if I can trust her. Have you talked to her since she came here?" "No." Gabriel rubbed his eyes. "She's called and texted, but I haven't responded." Marta shook her head disapprovingly. "You can't avoid her forever. And you can't work yourself to death either." She was right, of course, but facing Beatrice meant making a decision, and Gabriel wasn't ready for that yet. "Go home, Mr. Torres," Marta said firmly. "Get some rest. The company won't fall apart if you take a night off." Reluctantly, Gabriel agreed. He packed up his things and headed to his penthouse. But as he approached his building, he found himself driving past it, heading toward the beach instead. The night was clear and cool, with a full moon casting silver light over the waves. Gabriel parked his car and walked along the shoreline, the same beach where he and Beatrice had spent that weekend together, the same beach from the photograph. As he walked, memories flooded back. Beatrice laughing as the waves chased her up the sand, the two of them building a sandcastle like children, sharing a bottle of wine as they watched the sunset, talking about their dreams for the future. Had it all been genuine, or had he been playing a part, pretending to be someone he wasn't? The truth was, Gabriel had been more himself with Beatrice than with anyone else in years. His money had always created a barrier between him and others. People treated him differently when they knew who he was, with either excessive deference or barely concealed interest in what they could gain from him. With Beatrice, he had been just Gabriel, not the billionaire, not the CEO, just a man in love with a woman. But he had lied to her, and now he was punishing her for not defending a man she didn't fully know. Lost in thought, Gabriel didn't notice the figure sitting on a rock ahead until he was almost upon her. He stopped short, his heart racing. Beatrice. She looked up, equally startled to see him. She was wrapped in a sweater against the evening chill, her hair loose around her shoulders. "Gabriel," she said, her voice barely audible over the sound of the waves. "What are you doing here?" he asked, too surprised to say anything else. "The same as you, I imagine," she replied, gesturing to the empty beach. "Thinking, remembering." Gabriel hesitated, then sat down on the sand near her rock. Neither spoke for a long moment, both watching the moonlight on the water. "I come here almost every night," Beatrice finally said. "It helps me clear my head." Gabriel glanced at her. "Since when?" "Since the dinner." She hugged her knees to her chest. "I haven't been sleeping well." Despite everything, Gabriel felt a pang of concern. Beatrice did look tired, with the same dark circles he saw in his own mirror each morning. "I got your photograph," he said. Beatrice nodded. "I meant what I wrote on it. What we have, can't be bought." "But it can be built on lies," Gabriel countered. "I lied about who I was, who I am." "Did you?" Beatrice turned to look at him directly. "You lied about your wealth, yes. But was the man I fell in love with a lie too? The man who spent hours talking with me about books and art and life, The man who remembered how I take my coffee and which flowers I like. Was he just a character you created? Gabriel looked away. No, he admitted quietly. That was all real. Then that's the man I love, Beatrice said simply. Not the billionaire CEO, not the man my family now wants to welcome with open arms, but the man who sat with me on this beach and talked about wanting a family someday. Gabriel felt something in his chest loosen at her words. He had been so focused on her family's reaction to his perceived status that he had forgotten to consider that Beatrice might truly love him for himself. I'm still angry, you know, he said, about what your family said that night. So am I, Beatrice replied. I've barely spoken to them since then. I told them I needed space to figure things out. This surprised Gabriel. You've been avoiding them, Beatrice nodded. What they said was horrible, Gabriel. I knew they could be status conscious, but I never realized how deeply it ran. The way they dismissed you based on what they thought you had. She shook her head in disgust. It made me question everything I thought I knew about them. And about yourself? Gabriel asked, the question that had been haunting him. Beatrice was quiet for a moment. Yes, about myself too. I've been asking myself if I would have fallen for you if you had been truly poor, if you had been a waiter instead of pretending to be one. And I don't know, she said honestly. I've never been tested that way. But I do know that when I fell in love with you, I thought you were comfortable but not wealthy. And that was enough for me. Gabriel considered this. It was true that Beatrice had never seemed interested in his finances. She had never asked about his income or pushed for expensive gifts or vacations. She had been content with simple dates and meaningful time together. What about that night? He asked. Why didn't you defend me more strongly to your family? Beatrice sighed. I wish I had, but Gabriel, I've spent my whole life trying to please them. Breaking free from that isn't easy. She looked at him with tears in her eyes. But I'm trying. Now, I'm learning to stand up for what I believe in, for who I believe in. Gabriel felt his anger beginning to fade. He wasn't ready to forgive completely, but he was starting to understand. So where does that leave us? He asked. I don't know, Beatrice admitted. But I miss you, Gabriel. I miss us. Gabriel looked out at the ocean, then back at the woman he loved. I miss us too. The next morning, Gabriel called Carlos. I need your advice, he said after they exchanged greetings. About Beatrice. Let me guess, Carlos replied. You saw her and now you're confused, Gabriel was taken aback. How did you know? Because I've known you for 20 years, and you've never been good at staying angry at people you care about. Plus, Beatrice called me yesterday. She wanted to know if you ever went to the beach at night. You told her where to find me. Gabriel couldn't decide if he was annoyed or grateful. I told her you sometimes go there to think. The rest was up to fate. Carlos paused. So did you two talk? Yes, Gabriel admitted. It was good, honest. And now you're wondering if you should give her another chance, Carlos guessed. Gabriel sighed. Am I being a fool? Her family made it clear what they think of me, or at least what they thought of me when they believed I wasn't wealthy. People can change, Gabriel, especially when they're forced to confront their own prejudices. But more importantly, you're not dating her family, you're dating her. They're a package deal in many ways, Gabriel pointed out, especially in their world. True, Carlos conceded. But the question is, do you love her enough to deal with that complication? That was the heart of it, wasn't it? Did he love Beatrice enough to work through this mess, to rebuild trust, to face her family again? I think I do, Gabriel said slowly, surprising himself with the realization. Then you have your answer, Carlos replied simply. After hanging up, Gabriel sat at his desk, thinking. If he was going to give this relationship another chance, he needed to do it right. No more secrets, no more tests, just honesty. He picked up his phone and called Beatrice. Can we meet? He asked when she answered. Not at the beach this time, somewhere we can really talk. Yes, she said, the relief in her voice palpable. Name the time and place. Gabriel suggested a small cafe they had visited on one of their early dates. It was neutral ground, neither his territory nor hers. When he arrived that afternoon, Beatrice was already there, sitting at a table by the window. She wore a simple dress and minimal makeup, a stark contrast to her usually polished appearance. "Thank you for coming," she said as he sat down across from her. Gabriel nodded. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since last night." "So have I," Beatrice replied. "And I want to start by apologizing again, not just for what my family said, but for my part in it. I should have stood up for you more strongly." "Yes, you should have," Gabriel agreed, "but I also owe you an apology. I deceived you for months, and then I set up a situation that was guaranteed to create conflict. That wasn't fair to you." Beatrice reached across the table and tentatively took his hand. "Where do we go from here, Gabriel? Can we start over?" Gabriel looked at their joined hands. "Not over exactly, but forward maybe, with complete honesty this time." "I'd like that," Beatrice said softly. "There's something else we need to discuss," Gabriel said, his tone more serious. "Your family," Beatrice tensed visibly. "What about them? If we're going to make this work, I need to know that you'll stand with me, not them, when it matters. I need to know that you're not choosing me now because of what I have, but because of who I am." "I am," Beatrice insisted. "Gabriel, I've spent the past week questioning everything, my family's values, my own beliefs. I've realized how much of my life has been shaped by fear of disappointing them, but loving you has given me the courage to break free from that. And if they never accept me, if they only pretend to because of my money, then that's their loss," Beatrice said firmly. "I choose you, Gabriel. Rich or poor, I choose you." Gabriel wanted to believe her. More than anything, he wanted to trust that this woman who had captured his heart so completely was sincere. "I want to believe you." He said honestly. "Then give me a chance to prove it," Beatrice pleaded. "Not with words, but with actions." Gabriel considered this. Perhaps that was what they both needed. Time to demonstrate through actions that their feelings were genuine. "All right," he said finally. "We'll take it one day at a time. No rushing, no pressure. Just us finding our way back to each other." Beatrice's smile lit up her face. "That's all I'm asking for, a chance." They spent the next few hours talking, really talking, about everything they had kept hidden. Gabriel told her about growing up poor, about building his company from nothing, about why privacy had become so important to him. Beatrice shared her struggles with her family's expectations, her desire to break free from their controlling influence, her own doubts and fears. By the time they left the cafe, something had shifted between them. The walls of deception and misunderstanding had begun to crumble, replaced by a fragile but growing trust. "Will I see you tomorrow?" Beatrice asked as they stood by their cars. "Yes," Gabriel said, surprising himself with how much he wanted that. "Dinner at my place, my real place this time," Beatrice smiled. "I'd like that." As she turned to go, Gabriel caught her hand. "Beatrice," she looked back at him. "Yes?" "I still love you," he said quietly. "Despite everything, that hasn't changed." Tears shimmered in her eyes. "I love you too, Gabriel. I always have." The next evening, Beatrice arrived at the Skyline Tower. Gabriel had texted her the address and instructions for the private elevator. As she rode up to the penthouse, she felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. This was another piece of Gabriel's real life that she was finally going to see. The elevator opened directly into his penthouse, and Beatrice gasped. The space was stunning, modern and luxurious, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. But what surprised her most was how warm it felt. This wasn't a cold showcase of wealth, but a real home with books on the shelves, art on the walls, and personal touches throughout. Gabriel emerged from the kitchen, wearing casual clothes and an apron. "Welcome to my real home," he said with a slight smile. "It's beautiful," Beatrice said, still taking it all in, "and very you." "Even though you're just now seeing it?" Gabriel raised an eyebrow. "Yes," Beatrice replied confidently. "The books, the art, the way everything is arranged, it all feels like the man I know." Gabriel's expression softened. "Come in. Dinner's almost ready." He had cooked for her, a simple but delicious meal of pasta and salad, with wine and fresh bread. They ate at the kitchen island, talking easily about their days. It felt normal, comfortable, as if the past week of turmoil had been a bad dream. After dinner, Gabriel gave her a tour of the penthouse. the home office where he sometimes worked late into the night, the library filled with books on every subject, the terrace with its small garden and seating area. "I never brought anyone here before," Gabriel admitted as they stood on the terrace looking out at the city lights. "This was always my sanctuary." Beatrice understood what he was really saying, that he was letting her into his life, his real life, completely. "Thank you for trusting me with this," she said softly. Gabriel turned to her, his expression serious. "There's one more thing we need to discuss." Beatrice felt a flutter of anxiety. "What is it?" "Your family," Gabriel said. "We can't avoid them forever," she sighed. "I know, they've been calling me constantly, trying to arrange a dinner so they can properly apologize to you." "Do you think they're sincere?" Gabriel asked skeptically. "I think they're sincere about wanting to make amends with the billionaire CEO they insulted," Beatrice said with unexpected bitterness. "Whether they're truly sorry for their attitude is another question entirely." Gabriel was surprised by her candor. This was a different Beatrice, from the one who had meekly accepted her family's condescension at the dinner. "We need to face them together," he said. "Not tomorrow or next week, but eventually, when we're both ready." Beatrice nodded. "I agree. But this time I promise I'll stand by you, no matter what they say or do." Gabriel pulled her into his arms. "I believe you," he said, and realized he actually did. Later that night, as they sat on his couch, Beatrice's head resting on his shoulder, Gabriel felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in a long time. There were still challenges ahead, rebuilding trust, facing her family, figuring out how to blend their lives together now that all secrets were in the open. But for the first time, he believed they could overcome those challenges together. "What are you thinking about?" Beatrice asked, noticing his thoughtful expression. Gabriel smiled. "The future. Our future." "And what does it look like?" she asked. "Complicated," he admitted, "but worth fighting for." Beatrice lifted her head to look at him. "I think so too." As they sat there in the quiet of his penthouse, Gabriel realized something important. The truth that had been revealed at the dinner had hurt them both, but it had also freed them. No more pretending, no more hiding. Just two people, flawed and human, choosing to love each other despite everything. And perhaps that was the greatest truth of all, that love, real love, could survive even the harshest revelations. But as Gabriel held Beatrice close, a small doubt lingered in the back of his mind. They still had one major hurdle to overcome: facing her family again, and that confrontation would be the true test of everything they had promised each other. 3 weeks had passed since Gabriel and Beatrice had begun rebuilding their relationship. They had fallen into a new routine: dinner at his penthouse or her apartment several times a week, weekend outings to places where they could talk freely, and late-night phone calls when they couldn't be together. With each passing day, the trust between them grew stronger. But they had been avoiding one important issue: Beatrice's family. She had maintained minimal contact with them, deflecting their increasingly urgent requests for another dinner. "They called again today," Beatrice said one evening, as she and Gabriel sat on his terrace, watching the sunset. "My mother left 3 voicemails." Gabriel took a sip of his wine. "We can't avoid them forever, you know." "I know," Beatrice sighed. "But every time I think about facing them, I remember how they talked about you that night. How I let them talk about you that way." Gabriel reached over and took her hand. "We've moved past that, haven't we?" "I have," Beatrice said. "But have they? Or do they just want to get on the good side of Gabriel Torres, billionaire CEO?" It was a fair question. The Vasconcelos family had made numerous attempts to contact Gabriel directly, through his office, through mutual acquaintances, even through Carlos, whose catering company they had tried to book again, clearly hoping he would pass along a message. "There's only one way to find out," Gabriel said. "We need to meet with them." Beatrice looked at him, concern in her eyes. "Are you sure you're ready for that?" Gabriel wasn't sure at all. Part of him still smarted from their condescension, from the way they had dismissed him based on what they thought he lacked. But another part of him knew that if he and Beatrice were going to have a future together, they couldn't keep her family at arm's length forever. "Yes," he said, with more confidence. Then he felt, Let's do it this weekend at my place. Beatrice's eyes widened. Here? You want them to come here? Gabriel nodded. This is my home, my real home. If they're going to be part of our lives, they should see who I really am, not just what I own. After a moment's hesitation, Beatrice agreed. I'll call them tomorrow. Gabriel squeezed her hand. We'll face them together this time. No secrets, no pretending. Eduardo and Helena Vasconcelos, along with their son Ricardo, arrived at the Skyline Tower precisely at 7 on Saturday evening. The doorman directed them to the private elevator that would take them directly to Gabriel's penthouse. I still can't believe he lives here, Helena whispered to her husband as they rode up. The entire top floor. Remember why we're here, Eduardo warned in a low voice. This is about making amends, not about his money. Ricardo rolled his eyes. Sure, Dad. We'd be making the same amends if he really had been a waiter. Eduardo shot his son a warning look as the elevator doors opened. Gabriel and Beatrice stood waiting for them hand in hand. Gabriel was dressed casually but elegantly in dark pants and a light blue shirt. Beatrice wore a simple black dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. Welcome, Gabriel said, his tone polite but reserved. Please come in. The Vasconcelos family stepped into the penthouse, their eyes taking in the spacious living area with its tasteful furnishings and spectacular view. So your home is lovely, Helena said, breaking the awkward silence. Thank you, Gabriel replied. Can I offer you something to drink? Wine? Cocktails? Eduardo cleared his throat. A scotch would be nice if you have it. I'll have the same. Ricardo. Had it? White wine for me, please, Helena said. As Gabriel moved to the bar to prepare the drinks, Beatrice gestured toward the seating area. Please, make yourselves comfortable. There was a tense silence as everyone took their seats. Gabriel returned with the drinks, handing them out before sitting beside Beatrice on the couch. Well, Eduardo began awkwardly. First and foremost, we owe you an apology, Mr. Torres. Gabriel, please, he interrupted. Gabriel, Eduardo corrected himself. What happened at our dinner was inexcusable. The way we spoke about you, the assumptions we made based on what we thought was your financial situation, it was wrong, and we are deeply sorry. Gabriel studied Eduardo's face, searching for signs of sincerity. The older man seemed genuinely remorseful, though it was hard to tell if it was for the right reasons. I appreciate your apology, Gabriel said carefully. But I have to ask, are you sorry for what you said, or just sorry that you said it about someone who turned out to be wealthy? The blunt question caught Eduardo off guard. He glanced at his wife, who looked equally uncomfortable. That's a fair question, Eduardo admitted after a moment. And I would be lying if I said your status hasn't affected how urgently we felt we needed to make amends. But the truth is, your revelation that night forced us to confront some uncomfortable truths about ourselves. Helena nodded. We've always been conscious of status and connections. It's how we were raised, how we've lived our lives. But seeing ourselves through your eyes that night, she shook her head. It wasn't flattering. Ricardo, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. Let's be honest here. What we said was terrible, regardless of who you turned out to be. I was the worst of all. He looked Gabriel directly in the eye. I judged you based on nothing but assumptions, and I was cruel about it. I'm sorry for that. Gabriel was surprised by Ricardo's forthrightness. Of all the Vasconcelos family, he had expected the least sincerity from Beatrice's brother. Why the change of heart? Gabriel asked him directly. Ricardo glanced at Beatrice before answering. Because my sister hasn't spoken to me in 3 weeks. Because she made it clear that if we couldn't accept you, the real you, not your bank account, then we would lose her, he shrugged. And because when I looked back at what I said that night, I didn't like the person I saw. Beatrice, who had been silent until now, reached for Gabriel's hand. I told them that things are different now, that I'm different, that if they want me in their lives, they need to respect the man I love. Gabriel felt a surge of pride at her words. This was the strength he had hoped to see from her, the courage to stand up for what she believed in. It hasn't been easy, Helena admitted. Breaking lifelong habits of thought, questioning values we've held for generations. But we're trying. For Beatrice and, she hesitated, for ourselves too. Because what kind of people judge others based solely on their perceived wealth or lack thereof? Eduardo nodded. We don't expect forgiveness immediately, Gabriel, but we hope over time to show you that we can change, that we want to change. Gabriel looked at each of them in turn, weighing their words. Then he glanced at Beatrice, who gave him an encouraging nod. I appreciate your honesty, he said finally, and I'm willing to start fresh, not forget what happened but move forward. The relief on their faces was evident. The tension in the room seemed to decrease a notch. Thank you, Eduardo said sincerely. That's more than we have a right to expect. Gabriel stood up. Now, how about we have dinner? I've arranged for a meal to be delivered. As they moved to the dining table, Gabriel pulled Beatrice aside for a moment. You stood up to them, he whispered. You chose us. Beatrice smiled. I told you. I would. No more letting fear guide my choices. Dinner was still somewhat stilted, but as the evening progressed, the conversation began to flow more naturally. Gabriel spoke about his company, his philanthropic efforts, his vision for the future. The Vasconcelos family talked about their own businesses and interests. By the time dessert was served, Gabriel found himself actually enjoying parts of the conversation. Eduardo had a sharp business mind. Helena was knowledgeable about art and culture, and even Ricardo showed flashes of wit and insight when he wasn't being defensive. After dinner, they moved back to the living area for coffee. The mood had lightened considerably, though there was still an undercurrent of caution on all sides. There's something else we need to discuss, Gabriel said as they settled into their seats. The future. My future with Beatrice. Eduardo straightened. What do you mean specifically? Gabriel looked at Beatrice, who nodded encouragingly. I love your daughter. I want to build a life with her. But I need to know that we'll be allowed to do that on our terms, not based on your expectations or traditions. Helena's brow furrowed. What kind of expectations are you concerned about? The expectation that status and connections should determine who we associate with. The pressure to live a certain way, move in certain circles. Gabriel took Beatrice's hand. We want to create our own path. Eduardo and Helena exchanged glances. It was clear this was a concept they hadn't fully considered. I'm not sure we understand, Eduardo said slowly. You're a successful businessman. Surely you understand the importance of maintaining certain standards. Dad, Beatrice interjected, what Gabriel is saying is that we want to be free to choose our own friends, our own lifestyle, without feeling judged if they don't meet some arbitrary standard of wealth or influence. Ricardo surprised everyone by chuckling. You're asking Mum and Dad to stop being snobs, basically. Good luck with that. Helena shot her son a look, but there was a hint of humor in her eyes. Is that really how we come across? As snobs? Yes, all three younger people said in unison, then looked at each other in surprise before laughing. Eduardo sighed. I suppose we've earned that reputation, but people can change, can't they? He looked at Gabriel. You gave us a second chance. Perhaps you can give us a chance to show that we can respect your choices, even if we don't always understand them. That's all we're asking for, Gabriel said. The freedom to make our own decisions without interference. And what about you, Gabriel? Helena asked. Will you give us the chance to get to know the real you? Not just the successful businessman, but the man our daughter fell in love with. It was a fair question. Gabriel had been just as guarded as they had been judgmental. If they were going to move forward, he would need to open up as well. Yes, he agreed. No more hiding behind half-truths or assumptions. Just honesty on all sides. Eduardo raised his coffee cup in a small toast. To honesty, then, and to new beginnings? Everyone raised their cups, the gesture simple but significant. It wasn't a complete resolution. There were still wounds to heal, trust to rebuild. But it was a start. After the Vasconcelos family left, Gabriel and Beatrice stood in the quiet of his penthouse, reflecting on the evening. That went better than I expected, Gabriel admitted. They're trying, Beatrice said. It won't be perfect overnight, but they're making an effort. Gabriel pulled her into his arms. You were amazing tonight, standing up to them, standing with me. It's getting easier, Beatrice said, being true to myself, to what I really want. She looked up at him. And what I want is you. Not your money, not your status, just you. Gabriel believed her. The past few weeks had shown him a strength in Beatrice he had only glimpsed before, a willingness to fight for their relationship, to challenge the values she had been raised with. "I have something for you," he said, stepping back and reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small velvet box. Beatrice's eyes widened. "Gabriel." He opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant diamond ring. "I'm not asking you to marry me tonight. We still have things to work through, walls to break down, but I want you to know that's where I see us heading, when we're both ready." Tears filled Beatrice's eyes. "It's beautiful. It's a promise," Gabriel explained. "A promise that whatever comes next, we face it together. No more secrets, no more tests. Just us, building something real." Beatrice held out her hand, and Gabriel slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. "I love you," she whispered. "The real you. The man who reads philosophy books late at night and sings off-key in the shower and cares more about people than profits." Gabriel smiled. "And I love you. The woman who's brave enough to change, to question everything she was taught, to stand up for what she believes in." As they stood there in the soft lighting of his penthouse, with the city twinkling below them, Gabriel realized that the truth revealed at that fateful dinner had been painful, but necessary. It had stripped away pretenses on both sides, forced them to see each other clearly for the first time, and what they had found beneath the masks and expectations was something worth fighting for, something real. 6 months later, Gabriel stood in the garden of his new home, a house by the beach that he and Beatrice had chosen together. It was neither as grand as the Vasconcellos estate, nor as modern as his penthouse, but it was theirs, a place that represented the life they were building together. The garden was filled with friends and family for their engagement party. Carlos was there with his wife. Marta had come with her husband. Even Eduardo, Helena, and Ricardo were present, mingling comfortably with guests from different backgrounds and social circles. Gabriel watched as Beatrice moved among the guests, radiant in a simple white dress, her engagement ring catching the late afternoon sunlight. They had decided to wait a year before getting married, giving themselves time to grow together, to be sure that what they were building would last. In that time, Gabriel had seen Beatrice truly come into her own. She had started a foundation for arts education in underserved communities, using her family connections for good rather than for status. She had developed a close friendship with Marta, something that would have been unthinkable before the dinner incident, as they now jokingly called it. The Vasconcellos family had made progress too. They were still learning, still sometimes falling back into old patterns of thinking. But they were trying, and that meant something. Gabriel felt a presence beside him and turned to find Eduardo standing there, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. He offered one to Gabriel. "A beautiful party," Eduardo said, looking around the garden. "Much more relaxed than the events Helena usually plans." Gabriel smiled. That was the idea. Just good food, good music, and people we care about. Eduardo nodded thoughtfully. "You know, 6 months ago I wouldn't have understood the appeal of this. I would have been concerned about the guest list, the prestige, what people would think." He took a sip of his champagne. "Now I find myself actually enjoying the conversations I'm having with your friend Carlos about his catering business." "People can change," Gabriel said, echoing Eduardo's words from that night in his penthouse. "Yes, they can." Eduardo looked at him directly. "Thank you for giving us the chance to show that." Before Gabriel could respond, Beatrice appeared, slipping her arm through his. "What are you two talking about so seriously? This is a party." Eduardo smiled at his daughter. "Just thanking your fiancé for his patience with your old-fashioned father," Beatrice laughed. "You're learning, Dad, we all are." As Eduardo moved away to join his wife, Beatrice turned to Gabriel. "Happy?" Gabriel looked around at the gathering, at this blend of his world and hers, at the life they were creating together. "Very." "You?" "More than I ever thought possible." She leaned up to kiss him. "And to think it all started with you dressed as a waiter, spying on my family dinner." Gabriel laughed. "Not my proudest moment. But maybe a necessary one," Beatrice said thoughtfully. "We needed that shock to see the truth. About them, about ourselves." Gabriel nodded. The truth at dinner. The truth that set us free, Beatrice added. As the sun began to set over the ocean, Gabriel gathered everyone for a toast. With Beatrice by his side, he raised his glass. To truth, he said simply, and to love that's strong enough to withstand it. The glasses clinked, the sounds of laughter and conversation filled the air, and Gabriel knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, with honesty, with courage, and with love that had been tested and proven true. To P. Truth revealed at that dinner had nearly torn them apart, but in the end it had given them something far more valuable than comfort or security. It had given them a love based on who they really were, not what they pretended to be, and that, Gabriel thought as he pulled Beatrice close, was worth more than all the wealth in the world. The end.